And welcome to Fox News Sunday Panel Plus with Bill Kristol, Kirsten Powers, Laura Ingraham, and Juan Williams. And we are going to continue the discussion we had on our broadcast show about gun control. We just got into it at the very last minute of the second panel. Laura expressed her feelings and accused Juan of scowling. Juan?
Pouting.
I know.
Pouting, you said? I thought it was scowling, but in any case.
But I just think, I share Laura's feeling. I mean, to me, what happened there is horror. And in the Christmas season, it has particular emotional resonance for people who are parents. But I don't think there's nothing we can do. Yes, I think there are enough guns in this country, and therefore, if you start a ban now, the guns are there. We've seen an increase in gun sales as a result of people fearing somehow that President Obama is going to take my guns or whatever madness and paranoia is out there. But there are real steps that can be taken. We can close the gun show loophole.
Tell us what the gun show loophole is.
The gun show loophole is that if you are not a licensed gun dealer, you can, if you're an antiques holder or whatever, or just want to trade a gun, you're free to do it without a background
check. What's the percentage of crimes committed by guns purchased
I don't
by a
know
gun
what the
show?
I don't
1%.
have that with me.
1%.
But I'm saying these are steps we can take. Secondly, I think that we can have the government.
Nothing.
We can have the government share information among agencies so that if someone is buying a gun, we can know if that person has mental issues. We can know if
Mrs. Lanza didn't have mental conditions.
I'm telling you, her son did, and I'm one who would say, let's check on people around you. Who is it that's going to have access to this gun? No. Let's put it down. Then don't belittle it. It's a real effort. The man who committed the Virginia Tech shooting, he'd been ruled incompetent by a judge.
That's a completely
and
different...
yet, that information was not available to state authorities who allowed him to buy a gun. So there is information sharing among state and federal agencies that should and can take place. These are reasonable steps, Laura.
93% of gun crimes, gun violence, murders that end up in murders are purchased illegally. 93%. Right. And those guns that she purchased were not purchased illegally. The question is, why do you have handguns in a home, which I agree with you, if you have fears about your children? Well, that's a legitimate question.
Okay,
but to say the gun show, that is just such a reflexive response. It ends up accomplishing nothing.
Well,
gun shows are popular places to go. People enjoy going to gun shows. If you want to tell me that private gun sales are really the problem with violence in the country, I want to look at your statistics. Look at John Lott and look at his study that he's done on concealed carry permits. That's the most comprehensive study done on gun violence ever done.
Let me bring in Kirsten, and I think we have to note the fact, and we don't have the front pages, but the two New York tabloids yesterday responded to Wayne LaPierre. The one called him the craziest man on earth, I think. That was the Daily News. And the normally conservative New York Post, owned by our parent company News Corp, called him gun nut.
Yeah. Well, I didn't find his press conference to be particularly helpful to addressing the situation.
Well, first of all, it wasn't a press conference. It was a speech.
Right, a speech. He didn't take any questions. So, but I don't look to the NRA I think we should be able to look to the NRA, but I don't look to the NRA to be helpful in this issue because I don't feel like they ever are helpful with this issue. And I think Laura is right to a certain extent in the sense that most of the crimes are not committed by the things that I think most of the ideas liberals come up with would stop people from getting guns. But there should be stricter laws about securing your guns, for example. And I think the idea that I think a lot of people who, I don't know if this woman grew up around guns or not. I grew up around guns. You don't leave guns unsecured. And I think that there's a problem in our culture where they become toys, and people think this is my hobby and I have a gun, but they don't really understand how you're supposed to keep them. My brother keeps his guns in a safe. My father locked up his guns.
Rifles. What about these magazines that have 50 rounds?
Here's the problem with that. In this day and age, almost every gun is semi-automatic. Even a pistol semi-automatic. So you would literally be banning all guns. And it didn't. I don't know at what point that happened. I didn't grow up with semi-automatic weapons, but at some point.
I mean, you say you'd be banning all guns. Would you be banning all guns, or would you say you got to go back a generation in technology?
Muskets.
Well, you would be confiscating guns. I mean, 300 million.
This isn't necessarily grandfathered in.
Okay, but we already have 300 million people. 300 guns are owned. 300 million guns are owned in this country. We only have 300 million people.
Right.
So even if we tomorrow banned these, it doesn't matter. They're out there. I mean, we're going to have to approach this problem in a different way. We're going to have to look at the mental illness aspect of it. I am not opposed to banning the guns. I just don't think it's going to solve the problem because there's just too many of them, unless you're going to confiscate the guns. And I just don't see the government trying to confiscate guns from citizens.
Bill?
think that's right. And I mean, I myself am not a gun owner and I'm not an NRA member, but I want to say a word in defense of the NRA. Maybe it was not a very aesthetically pleasing speech by Wayne LaPierre. They are actually an organization that have 4 million dues-paying members, non-coerced dues, unlike some unions, I would add, and they represent those members' views. And if they didn't, I think people would leave the NRA, and there have been efforts in the past to get people to leave the NRA. It seems like there are a lot of people in this country who don't believe, for reasons Laura expressed, that most of these gun control measures do much good in terms of saving lives. And also, I do think there's a hidden agenda, which isn't so hidden these days, to move beyond these minor measures to some kind of confiscation, or at least a
no, come on. Confiscation? Who has ever talked about confiscation?
Okay,
the Supreme Court has said that you have Second Amendment rights. Tell that
to Mayor Bloomberg and others. And tell that to people in New York City and in other places where it's very difficult to own a gun, where there has been de facto. And tell it to our Rupert Murdoch, who owns this company, who cited the example of Australia, where guns were confiscated. And for me, I'll just say one thing semi in defense of the NRA, which is I don't agree with them on everything at all. They actually are, as I say, an organization of dues-paying members. It's a little bit rich for all these billionaires who have personal security, and I would bet their security guards have semi-automatic handguns on them. And for people sitting in buildings that are very well secured, who live in places that are secured, and sit in a building like this that has the security guards downstairs, it's a little bit rich for all these people to tell normal citizens, hey, you don't get security, you don't get guns because we think you're a bunch of lunatics.
That's not
and
what
we get security.
Saying, Bill, people are saying you don't need automatic weapons that are better fit for
semi-automatic.
No, you don't
automatic
need
weapons
these
are banned in the United States.
You don't need these huge magazines with all these.
I'm open on the
people are
magazines.
just trying to be reasonable, Bill. And let me just finish with Bill for a second, Laura. I mean, I think that when you say, the NRA is just ordinary people, what about it's about the gun manufacturers who put big money into the NRA to continue making profits without any limits, and that's why you see the big hedge funds and Wall Street now saying, you know what, this is blood money, this is like blood diamonds, and we're pulling out.
Guys, we are about to go into the next program. What are you talking about? You got a radio show? You've got all kinds of ways to get this out.
We start back on.
She never gets to
get on. Thank you, panel. Check in with us throughout the week. Check Laura's blog. You'll see what she had to say. Look for my Monday edition of Wallace Unplugged. You can find it right here at FoxNewsSunday.com. We'll see you back here next Sunday.